Mom, stop coming over. You make Derek uncomfortable, and frankly, so do we. That was the text. Tuesday afternoon, 2047 p.m. I was standing in the produce section at the Safeway on Burnside, holding a bag of those small yellow squash my daughter loved as a kid, and my phone buzzed in my hand. I read it twice. Then a third time, because the words wouldn't sit right in my brain. The squash slipped out of my fingers and rolled under the display. I didn't bend down to get them. A woman with a red cart asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. I wasn't fine. I drove home with my hands at 10 and 2, the way my late husband had taught me 40 years ago, and I didn't cry until I got into the garage and turned off the engine. My name is Geraldine. I'm 63 years old. I retired from the City of Portland's planning department 2 years ago after 31 years of service. I am the co-owner, on paper and in the eyes of the United States government, of a 4-bedroom craftsman house in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, purchased in 2021 for $740,000. The other co-owner is my daughter, the one who just texted me to stay away. Her name is Whitney. She's 34. Derek is her husband. Let me tell you how we got here. When my husband Calvin died of pancreatic cancer in 2019, he left me with a paid-off bungalow in Beaverton, a modest pension, his life insurance, and one daughter who I thought was the center of my world. Whitney had been close to her father, closer than she was to me, and his death broke something in her. She came home from Seattle for the funeral, stayed 3 weeks, and I held her every night while she cried. I thought we were closer than ever. 2 years later, she called me. She and Derek wanted to move back to Portland. They'd found a house, a beautiful one in Laurelhurst, near the school where they hoped to send their future kids. There was just one problem. Derek had been laid off from his marketing job during the pandemic and had only just started a new position. Whitney was a freelance graphic designer. Their credit, individually and together, wasn't strong enough to qualify for the loan they needed. The down payment they had wasn't enough to make up for it. But if I co-signed and put my name on the deed as co-owner, the bank would approve them. My credit was excellent. My retirement income was steady. My Beaverton house was paid off and could be used as collateral if it ever came to that. I sold the bungalow. Calvin and I had bought it in 1986 for $91,000. I sold it for $495,000. I took $220,000 of that and put it toward the down payment on the Laurelhurst house. I kept the rest in a Vanguard account because I'm not stupid, even if I am soft. We closed in March of 2021. I remember signing the papers and Whitney leaning over to kiss my cheek and whispering, "I love you, Mom. We're going to take such good care of you." Derek shook my hand. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with that very white smile that orthodontia gives you when your parents have money. He told me, "We're family now, Geraldine. Really, truly family." I should have seen it then, the way he said Geraldine instead of Mom. But I was too busy crying happy tears. For the first 6 months, things were lovely. I rented a small apartment 15 minutes away. I went over for Sunday dinners. I helped Whitney pick out paint colors. I babysat the neighbor's golden retriever when they went on vacation because the dog and Whitney's cat got along. Derek was polite, distant but polite, and I told myself that's just how some men are. Calvin had been warm. Not all men are. Then Whitney got pregnant. My granddaughter, Emerson, was born in August of 2022, and something shifted. Derek didn't want me at the hospital. He said it was a core family bonding moment. Whitney didn't fight him on it. I drove down anyway, sat in the parking garage for 2 hours, and went home without going inside. When Emerson was 3 weeks old, I asked if I could come over. Derek answered the door. He told me Whitney was sleeping and the baby was fussy, and maybe another time would be better. I brought a casserole. He didn't take it. I left it on the porch. I made myself a list in the months that followed, a literal list, in the green spiral notebook I keep next to the kitchen phone. I'm a planner. I worked in zoning for 3 decades. Lists are how I process things. The list was titled, "Things That Have Changed." I wrote down small things. The way Whitney stopped texting me back the same day. The way Derek would stand in doorways with his arms crossed when I visited, like a bouncer at a club. The way Emerson, who I'd held maybe 11 times by her first birthday, called me the lady when she could finally talk. The lady. Not grandma, not Grammy. The lady. I told myself it would pass. I told myself young couples with babies need space. I told myself Derek had grown up with a mother who, from what little Whitney had shared, was difficult and overbearing, and maybe he was just gun-shy. I told myself a lot of things. Standing alone at my kitchen window in that little rented apartment, watching cars go by. Then last spring, Whitney called me, crying. She said she'd been in therapy and had realized she needed to set some boundaries. She said it would be best if I waited for her to reach out instead of me reaching out. She said Derek had been so patient with her family of origin issues, and she wanted to honor that. Family of origin. Like I was a clinical term. I asked her if I'd done something wrong. She said, "Mom, this isn't about right or wrong. It's about my mental health." Then she hung up. That was April. I didn't see Emerson once between April and that Tuesday in October. 8 months. I'd send a card on her birthday with $200 in it for her college fund. The check would clear. There was no thank you. And then the text. "Mom, stop coming over. You make Derek uncomfortable. And frankly, so do we." I dropped off a small pumpkin on their porch the weekend before. That was my crime. A $4 pumpkin from the Safeway parking lot, because Emerson was about to turn 3, and I thought she might like to see something cheerful. I sat in my car in the garage and cried until my chest hurt. Then I went inside, washed my face, and made myself a cup of Lipton tea. And I opened the green notebook to a fresh page. I titled it What I Actually Have. I wrote, 50% legal ownership of 447 NE Hawthorne Place mortgage in both names, joint and several liability, HELOC in both names, $80, 1,000 drawn, Derek's kitchen renovation, property taxes paid from joint escrow account I funded last cycle, homeowner's insurance policy. I am the primary policyholder, original $220K down payment, my money. Traceable. And then I wrote, what does the law say? The next morning, I called my old colleague from the planning department, Constance Reyes. She'd left the city to go to law school in her 40s, and now had her own real estate practice in the Pearl District. We met for coffee at a little place on 23rd that has good scones. I told her everything. I didn't cry. I'd cried myself out the night before. Constance listened without interrupting. She's a small, sharp woman who wears her gray hair in a bob and has the kind of eyes that don't miss anything. When I was finished, she stirred her coffee for a long moment. "Geraldine," she said, "I want to be very clear with you about something. You're not a victim here. You're a co-owner. You have rights, and they are substantial. The question is whether you want to exercise them." She walked me through it. As a 50% owner with my name on the deed, I had what's called a right of partition. Oregon law, like most states, allows any co-owner of real property to force the sale of the property if the co-owners can't agree. I could file a partition action. The court would order the house sold, the proceeds divided. That alone would not be enough. They could try to buy me out. They might find a way. But there was more. The HELOC, that home equity line of credit Derek had drawn $80,000 on for his fancy kitchen with the imported Italian tile, that was in both our names. I was equally liable, but I also had access. I could see the statements. I could see, for instance, that the minimum payment had been paid every month, but that the balance hadn't gone down. They were treating it like free money. If the property was sold under partition, that HELOC came due immediately, in full. And then there was the homeowner's insurance. I'd set up that policy in 2021 because Derek had let his lapse on their previous rental, and I didn't want to take chances. The policy was in my name. I could change it, restructure it, or let it expire entirely if I gave proper notice. The mortgage company required active homeowners insurance. If they didn't have it, the lender could declare the loan in default. You're not going to do that, though, Constance said, watching my face. Default would hurt your credit, too. I know, I said. I'm not trying to burn anything down. I'm trying to take what's mine. She nodded slowly. There's one more thing you should think about. You're co-owner. You have legal right to enter the property at any time. You can't be trespassed from your own house. I sat with that. Then I asked her, Constance, am I being cruel? If I do this, she set down her cup. Geraldine, you sold your house. You gave them $220,000. You put your retirement security on the line so your daughter could have her dream home. They thanked you by erasing you from your granddaughter's life. The question isn't whether you're being cruel. The question is whether you want to keep paying the price of being polite. I went home and made my plan. It took me 3 weeks working at the kitchen table every evening with the green notebook, and I did it methodically, the way I used to draw up zoning variance reviews. Step 1, protect myself. I had Constance draft a notice that I was no longer providing personal guarantee on any future debt drawn against the HELOC. I had her freeze any further draws from my side. I made sure my retirement accounts and Vanguard funds were untouchable. Step 2, documentation. I made copies of every document related to the house. Closing papers, mortgage statements, HELOC statements, insurance policies, property tax records, the bank transfer record showing my $220,000 down payment. I scanned everything to a thumb drive and put it in my safe deposit box at U.S. Bank downtown. Step 3, I booked a trip. I'd never been to Charleston. Calvin and I had always meant to go. South Carolina, low country, the harbor, the old houses. I booked 2 weeks at a small hotel called the Vendue, 4 blocks from the water. I bought a new sundress at Macy's. I felt 63 years old, and I felt fine about it. Step 4 was the hard one. I had Constance prepare the partition complaint. We'd file it the day before I left for Charleston. I wouldn't tell Whitney or Derek. They'd be served at the house. I wanted them to learn what real consequences felt like, and I wanted to be far away when they did. Step 5, and this one wasn't part of the original plan. It came later, the night before I flew out. I was packing my carry-on, putting my reading glasses in their case, and my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar. It was Derek's father. His name was Russell Hammond. We'd met exactly twice, both times at family events early on, before Whitney got pregnant. He was a retired airline pilot, lived in Vancouver, Washington. A tall, quiet man with very tired eyes. Geraldine, he said, I hope you'll forgive me calling out of the blue. I got your number from my wife's old address book. I sat down on the edge of my bed. Russell, is everything all right? No, he said. It's not. And I think you and I need to talk. He told me he and Derek's mother had been worried for months, that Derek had cut them off too, after his mother had gently questioned why Geraldine wasn't being included in family events, that Derek had told them they were boundary violating and enmeshed, that his mother had been crying every night for weeks, that they hadn't seen Emerson since Easter. My wife isn't well, he said. Her cancer came back last month. We don't know how much time we have, and our son is treating us like garbage, and I don't know what we did wrong, and I don't know what to do. I held the phone for a long moment. I looked at my open suitcase. I looked at the picture of Emerson, age 6 months, that I kept on my dresser. The only photo I had of her. Whitney had texted it to me before everything changed. Russell, I said, I'm flying to Charleston tomorrow, but when I come back, I think we need to have lunch. There are some things you should know, and I think there are some things I should know too. We talked for an hour and a half. By the end of it, I understood several things I hadn't understood before. Derek had a pattern. Russell didn't use the word narcissist, and neither did I, though it sat in the silence between us. He'd done this with his college girlfriend's family. He'd done it with his sister, who he hadn't spoken to in 9 years. He cultivated isolation. He surrounded his life with people who would do what he wanted. and he cut out everyone who wouldn't. Whitney had been his perfect target, a grieving daughter, recently lost her father, hungry for stability, willing to please. "I'm not making excuses for him," Russell said. "He's a grown man. He's responsible for his choices. But I want you to know that you didn't cause this. And I want you to know that whatever you decide to do, I'll back you up." I asked him what he meant. "I mean," he said, "that if there's a hearing or a deposition or anything legal and you need someone to testify about Derek's history, I will. So will my wife, if she's still with us." I flew to Charleston the next morning. The papers were filed at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I landed in Charleston at 8 p.m. Eastern. I had a glass of white wine at the hotel bar. I didn't check my phone. Charleston was beautiful. I walked Rainbow Row in the morning. I took a tour of the Aiken-Rhett house and stood in the slave quarters and felt the weight of the history. I ate she crab soup at Husk and didn't think about my daughter for almost 90 minutes. I sat on the rooftop bar of my hotel in the evening with a book, and the harbor air was warm and salty and tasted like a different life. On day 3, I turned my phone on for the first time and let the messages come in. 47 missed calls. Whitney, Derek, Whitney, Derek, Whitney, Derek, Whitney, Derek. Unknown numbers, probably their lawyer. Whitney, Derek, Whitney. The voicemails started professional and got progressively unhinged. The first one from Whitney was tight and controlled. "Mom, we received some papers today, and there's clearly been a misunderstanding. Please call me back as soon as you can." The 5th one was screaming. The 8th one was crying. The 12th one was Derek, and he called me a name that I won't repeat, and I felt nothing when I heard it. Nothing at all. I texted Whitney one sentence: "I'll be home in 11 days. We can talk then, through Constance Reyes, my attorney. Her number is below." Then I turned off my phone and went to dinner. The next 10 days, I lived. I really did. I took a day trip to Edisto Island. I bought a watercolor painting from a woman selling them out of a folding table on King Street. I ate fresh oysters at a place where the floor was covered in shells. I walked until my feet ached. I read 3 novels. I called Russell twice, and we talked about ordinary things, like his garden and a movie he'd seen. I cried twice, both times in the early morning before the sun came up, and both times the crying was lighter than the night before. When I flew home, Constance picked me up at the airport. She had updates. The partition action had been served. Whitney and Derek had hired a lawyer, a young man from a downtown firm who, according to Constance, didn't seem to fully understand the situation. Their first move had been to claim that I'd abandoned my interest in the property by not living there, which is not a thing in Oregon law. Their second move had been to offer me $30,000 to walk away. Constance had laughed when she read me that letter. "Here's where we are," she said, driving me home. "They cannot afford to buy you out at fair market value. The house has appreciated to roughly $940,000. After mortgage payoff, that's about $370,000 in equity. Half of that is yours. Plus, given that you provided the down payment from separate property, we have a strong argument for a larger share. They don't have $185,000 sitting around. They have, based on the discovery we requested, about $11,000 in checking and a 401k. Derek can't easily liquidate." "So what happens?" I asked. "What happens is the house gets sold. The court will order it. They'll have to move." I was quiet for a while. We drove past my exit. Constance was taking me to her office. "Geraldine," she said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Do you want to push for the maximum, or do you want to give them a way out that lets you sleep at night?" I thought about it. I thought about Emerson, who I hadn't held since she was a baby, who didn't know me. I thought about Whitney, who I had loved more than my own breath for 34 years, who had sent me that text. I thought about Russell, whose wife was dying, who had been locked out of his only grandchild's life by the same man. "I want a settlement," I said, "but it has to include things money can't buy." I told her what I wanted. I wanted my full half of the equity. $185,000, plus reimbursement of my down payment plus a fair return, calculated from 2021. That came to about $270,000 all in. I wanted Derek to repay the HELOC he'd drawn down in full before any distribution. That was his debt morally, even if it was mine legally. And I wanted court-ordered grandparent visitation. In Oregon, you can pursue that under specific circumstances, especially when there's been a prior relationship that's been disrupted. Russell would join me in that petition. Constance smiled. I think we can get you all of that. The negotiation took 6 weeks. Whitney finally fired her lawyer and got a new one, an older woman who, I'm told, took one look at the file and told her clients that they were going to lose badly and they should accept the deal. The house went on the market in January. It sold in 11 days for $928,000. After everything, I walked away with $263,000 and change. Whitney and Derek walked away with about $40,000 between them. After the HELOC was paid off and the realtor took her cut, they moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Tigard. Derek lost his job in February for reasons I don't know and don't ask about. The grandparent visitation was harder. Whitney fought it. She cried in court. She said I destroyed her family. The judge, a woman about my age with steel gray hair, listened to all of it, looked at the evidence and granted me 1 weekend a month, plus alternating major holidays. Russell and his wife got the same. Russell's wife passed in April. She got to hold Emerson twice before she did, and she told me on the phone, the week before she died, that those 2 afternoons were the best gift anyone had given her in a long time. I want to tell you that Whitney and I have reconciled. I want to tell you that she came to me, contrite, that we cried in each other's arms, that everything is healed. That's not what happened. What happened is more complicated and more honest. What happened is that Whitney went into therapy, real therapy this time, with a therapist who wasn't recommended by Derek, that she filed for divorce in August. That in September, she showed up at my door with Emerson and a small bouquet of grocery store flowers and said, "Mom, I don't know how to start fixing this, but I want to try." I let them in. I made grilled cheese sandwiches. Emerson, who is 4 now, called me Grammy because Whitney had been showing her my picture and telling her stories. I cried into the cutting board while I sliced tomatoes, and Whitney saw me, and she came and put her arms around me, and she said, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." I told her I forgave her, and I meant it, but I also told her something else. I told her that forgiveness isn't a reset button, that we're going to rebuild slowly, that she has work to do and I have boundaries now of my own, that love is real, but it doesn't override accountability, that my house is my house and my money is my money and my heart is my heart, and I will share all of it with her as her mother, but never again as her safety net for a man who wanted to disappear me. She cried. She agreed. She's been working on it ever since, so have I. I bought a small condo in Northwest Portland with some of my settlement money. I have a guest room. Emerson stays over twice a month. She started calling me Grammy with confidence now. Last weekend she asked me if I'd always been her grandma, and I told her yes, sweet pea, since the day you were born. And it was the truth. Russell calls me every Sunday. We've become friends. The kind of friends 2 people become when they've been through something together that nobody else could understand. He's lonely without his wife. I'm not lonely, but I'm grateful for the company. I keep the green notebook in my desk drawer. The page that says what I actually have is folded down at the corner. Sometimes I open to it and read what I wrote, and I think about the woman who sat at her kitchen table in October of last year, scared and small, and I'm proud of her. I'm 63 years old. I gave my daughter my house, my savings, and my silence, and she gave me a text message telling me I made her uncomfortable. So I took back what was mine. And what I learned, what I want anyone reading this to learn, is that being a mother does not require you to disappear. That love without limits is not love, it's surrender. That when someone shows you that your sacrifice means nothing to them, you are allowed, you are required to stop sacrificing. There are still mornings I wake up and miss the woman I was before that Tuesday in October. The the woman who would have given anything, who didn't know how to say no, who thought love meant losing yourself. But there are more mornings now where I look out my window at the rose garden across the street, and I drink my coffee, and I am still here, fully here in my own life. That's the part nobody told me when I was young, that the best gift you can give the people you love is an endless giving. It's showing them what self-respect looks like. My granddaughter is going to grow up knowing, and that, more than the money, more than the house, more than anything, is what I won. I sit by the window most mornings now with my second cup of coffee, and I think about the woman I was before that Tuesday in the produce aisle. She wasn't a bad woman. She was just a woman who'd been taught, somewhere along the way, that love meant making yourself smaller until there was almost nothing left. What I understand now, at 63, is that every choice we make plants a seed. Whitney's text didn't come out of nowhere. It came from years of small moments where I said yes when I should have said wait a moment, where I gave when I should have asked, where I confused being needed with being loved. I taught my daughter, without meaning to, that my pain was free of charge, and Derek, walking into our family, simply read what I had already written. He didn't invent the script, he just turned the page faster than the rest of us. That's the hardest part of looking back honestly. The accountability runs in two directions. They wronged me, deeply, and I had spent 34 years preparing the soil where that wrong could grow. But here's what I've also come to understand. Recognizing your part in something is not the same as accepting its consequences forever. The day I opened that green notebook and wrote what I actually have, something shifted in me. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. And clarity is its own kind of strength, maybe the most underrated kind we have. I think about the three things my own mother used to say. A person needs to live a full life, a clean conscience, a working mind, and a backbone. She'd say it while she was kneading bread or hanging laundry, and I never paid much attention. I do now. A clean conscience meant I couldn't take revenge. I could only take what was mine. There's a real difference, and I felt it in my chest the whole way through. I never wanted Whitney to suffer. I wanted her to wake up. Those are not the same thing. A working mind meant I had to think instead of feel my way through. Constance, my old friend who became my lawyer, kept telling me to slow down, to document, to plan. I am not naturally a calculating person. But I learned that being thoughtful is not the same as being cold. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone, including yourself, is to be very, very precise about what is actually happening. A backbone meant doing the hard thing even when every part of me wanted to call Whitney and apologize for something I hadn't done. Standing in the Charleston airport, boarding pass in hand, I almost turned around 3 times. I didn't. That walk down the jet bridge was the bravest thing I've done since burying my husband. Emerson is going to grow up watching her grandmother and her mother rebuild something. She's going to see what it looks like when a woman knows her worth and still chooses kindness. That, more than any inheritance, is what I want to leave her. Not money, not the house. The example. You can love someone with your whole heart and still refuse to disappear for them. I wish I'd learned it sooner. I'm grateful I learned it at all.